Our society runs on oil, but one day supplies are set to run out. When that will be is the subject of much debate. The International Energy Agency estimates that supplies will meet demand up to 2030. In the UK, the recently formed Industry Taskforce on Peak Oil and Energy Security, or ITPOES, is less optimistic. The lobby group, which includes Virgin, Yahoo and leading architects Foster and Partners, warns that supplies of cheap, easily accessible oil will decline by 2013. Jeremy Leggett, executive chairman of Solarcentury and one of the report's contributors, says swift action is needed.
We're in danger of repeating the shock that we had with the financial crisis, where governments and a massive set of industries failed to see the mother and father of all crises coming in the financial markets.
The task force wants government to increase investment in clean energy and renewables well beyond European Union targets. The EU wants renewables to make up 20% of the region's energy mix by 2020. But Leggett says, given the chance, renewables could run the world.
Hindsight is always an incredible thing, but if we look back from the vantage point of 2030 at how much solar energy there is in the world and how quickly we displaced oil, gas and coal with it and all the brother and sister technologies in the renewable and efficient energy family, we'll look at some of the energy pundits of today and their projections and laugh.
Some people have already turned to renewables. Robin Oliver generates electricity from solar tiles on his roof. He says his electricity bills are around half of what they would have been otherwise.
When we're away at work, if it's generating electricity, it will sell that electricity onto the national grid. So the home, as well as sort of making our own energy, is also exporting energy to the national grid, and we receive money for that, which will offset our energy bills.
Oliver says he would now be reluctant to move to a home that didn't have some kind of renewable energy production built in. If the ITPOES predictions play out, many more of us will be turning to renewables sooner rather than later.
Something's happening. We've known it for a long time. The West knew it.
A serious problem. America is addicted to oil.
It's inconceivable to me that our children will be able to maintain the American way of life and that the world won't be full of resource-based wars of all kinds.
The East knew it.
Successfully completed, it will provide for a significant increase in the volume of oil supplies from Russia to China.
We've known it for a century.
There is no doubt about our absolute and complete dependence on oil. Without oil, civilization as we know it could not exist.
Rogers International Commodity Index has plummeted more than 50% since July. So are you still keeping faith with the commodities generally?
Well, faith is a terrible way to invest, Mr. Stevenson. I hope I don't invest on faith. One needs to invest on facts. But the facts are, during this period of time, the only thing that has the fundamentals unimpaired are commodities. Farmers cannot even get loans for fertilizer now. Nobody can get a loan to open a zinc mine. The supply of everything is going to be even worse shape coming out of this. The IEA recently came out with a study showing that the world's reserves of oil are declining at the rate of 7% a year. Well, you can do the arithmetic. The supply of everything is going down, oil and everything else. We're going to have serious supply problems before too much longer.
What about oil then? Where does that fit into the picture from your point of view?
Well, oil has been crushed, as you know. It's now below the cost of production in many places. It's certainly cost of production for alternate energy sources. So oil is going to make a huge comeback when it does. The International Energy Authority, who makes the studies, went to every oil field in the world, came to the conclusion that oil reserves are declining at the rate of 7% a year. You can do the arithmetic, Mr. Stevenson. In 15 years, there won't be any oil left unless somebody discovers a lot of oil quickly in very accessible areas, and the price of energy has to go through the roof again.
of course, your expertise in commodities, and we're seeing oil. We've heard Goldman Sachs recently say $200 a barrel isn't out of the question. Would you agree with that?
No, of course I would. I mean, there's been no great oil discovery, no major elephant discovery in over 40 years. I mean, all the great oil fields are in decline. The UK will be importing oil within the decade. I mean, the fields are depleting, and unless somebody discovers a lot of oil, very accessible oil, very quickly, the surprise is going to be how high the price stays and how high it goes.
In terms of what OPEC could do, we've seen President Bush, the Saudi Arabia, the only one with any spare capacity, has opened the spigot a little bit. But there is nobody really with spare capacity, is there?
Saudi Arabia says they have spare capacity. They've been saying it for 10 years now. And you remember 5 years ago they said we're going to increase production to 12 million barrels. There are people who will tell you that Saudi Arabia has been depleting its oil fields. They've been pumping water in there, and that Saudi Arabia doesn't have that spare capacity. Something is wrong somewhere. The Saudis keep saying prices are too high, there's plenty of oil. Well, then why don't they dump the oil on the market? Why don't they drown the speculators? They all blame it on the 29-year-old speculators. Drown them. Let them sit at their computers and pour the oil on their heads if there's so much oil. The problem is, Robert, there's not a lot of oil in the world.
I left school for the Affiliated Press and they sent me overseas. Out here in Turkmenistan, you can see it clearer. In little prefab towns the oil boom left in Central Asia. This is where it's going to happen. In towns too small to have a name, built in 2 weeks by oil industry contractors. It's 2024, the 21st century. People ask me how we let this happen. I tell them, we always knew. The storm is coming. Oil was running out. It's what we grew up in. Post-Middle East, post-peak oil, post-everything. What they called the long emergency. It started slow. Little things at first. Lines at the pump. That hot summer of 2008, when the blackouts started lasting weeks. The avian influenza hit in 2009. I got taken out of school when there wasn't enough vaccine. They said it would get better. Something would save us. Biofuels, solar power, cleaner nuke plants, maybe. The Depression hit in 2012. Africa ran out of food, then we did too. People stopped trying to do anything about the problems and just tried to survive. We'd watched them starve for 40 years and it didn't seem real. But pretty soon the scenes we used to watch on the news were happening just down the street. It's been happening for years. Now we're at the tipping point.
The International Energy Authority, who makes the studies, went to every oil field in the world, came to the conclusion that oil reserves are declining at the rate of 7% a year. You can do the arithmetic, Mr. Stevens.